I got these here Engine Tech lifters, and you know, Engine Tech used to supply me with some good lifters, but I'm not real sure. They got this little bottom foot here that's supposed to be a hard face, but I don't think it is. I think they just cut a line around the damn thing. Because these are not the lifters that they used to send me, and I hope that don't bite me in the ass. All right, so look, I said this was going to be a budget build, and it still is. I was actually going to use used lifters and reface them. And I was going to show everybody how to reface them, but we're on a time crunch with this thing, so I decided to go ahead and use new lifters. But we've been in a lifter shortage. It's hard to get flat tappet lifters right now. I normally use the HD lifters, the heavy duty lifters, which has a different clip in here. Which I need to do a whole video about lifters, I guess. But in this application, with this camshaft, because this is a pretty small cam, it's just a 270H comp. I think it'll be just fine. So, all right, I'm gonna clean these up. We'll be back. I'm gonna lube them up. We'll stick them in. There's nothing. So, I've already put all the lifters in, but I just, you know, I mean, this is common sense stuff, but some people don't know this. You want to put some kind of lube on the bottom, whether you use the you know, assembly, the red stuff that comes with comp, or the greens, whatever. I use ARP lube because this is what I use, and it's just my thing. But one thing, you don't want to get it on the sides, the ARP lube. So, and when you're putting lifters in, the number one thing you want to do is make sure that the lifters just glide in with ease. They should fall down under their own weight. If they don't, or if there's a burr or something that's holding that lifter, I mean, I'm turning the cam, you see how all the lifters are just basically falling? That's what you want. What I really like to see is when I do that, I like to see them turn, but a lot of times they won't do it until they're under pressure. So, when you install lifters, make sure that they just fall down just like that. If they don't, fix the problem. If you don't fix the problem, you'll end up with a flat camshaft. So, all right, we got that in. I got to put the timing chain on it. We got to round all that up, and then push rods, rockers. Got to figure out what we're going to do about the valve covers, because we're using these rockers and these valve covers, and well, there's a slight problem there. So, got to fix that. I'll see a grinder in the future. Winnie dog. How do you put lifters in?
You don't.
Alright. So we'll be back. Alright guys. So I managed to dig up a set of roller rockers I had laying around. They've got a few battle scars, but they're still in good shape. No, they don't hurt nothing. For the most part, they're all in good shape. And no more lift than this cam's going to have. I mean, that doesn't bother me. It was in a pretty violent engine explosion, not once but twice. So, like I said, but this is just a little bitty camshaft. So, we got our junky old Speedmaster push rods put in there. I'm not a big Speedmaster fan. Although I will say this, I had one customer that I built him a 383, and he runs it on dirt, and so far so good. I put those Speedmaster push rods in it because they were cheap and that's what he could afford, and that thing's still running strong, so I hadn't broke one yet. So maybe they'll be all right. So anyway, that's where we're at. I'm about to put these on. I can't adjust the valves yet because I don't have the timing chain yet. So I gotta find a timing cover. Dig one of those out somewhere. And anyway, so we're back on this thing, and no, the carburetor's not bolted on, the intake's not bolted on. They're just up there for show. Just wanted to see what it was. And yes, the previous owner of that carburetor did put the fuel line on backwards, but he did it for a reason. So just ignore all that going on right there. Customer brought me in a bunch of cores, and they just so happen to have some valuable parts for this motor. Of course, I bought a harmonic balancer yesterday from Summit, and then this one come in with a good harmonic balancer on it. So I guess I'll take that back. We put our used, kind of new, sort of used dyno run pulled timing chain back on there. I did put a new cam button in it. I found a beat to shit cam plate in my stash over there. Some good old hardware store bolts. We're going to use the timing cover that came off of that motor there that the customer brought for a core. And then we can button the front of it up.
So I'm going to show again.
That's where we're at. I'm going to do that right quick.
Show how to set valves, and it just really irritates me. Because a lot of them tell you, there's some that tell you how to do it right. A lot of them are telling you to do it the wrong way. Now, if you were doing a factory cam, or if you're doing a dump-off 30-30, you can do the 180-degree method, and that's fine. They're kind of designed for that. But the actual right way to set the rockers, now this is hydraulic. I did another video on how you set solid flat tapping cams, set the lash. This is pretty much the same, but I want to emphasize on where you set the rockers to make sure that that you're setting the lash or the preload on the base circle of the camshaft. You have to be on the base circle. And the way you know you're on the base circle is if we'll start with the intake. Well, we'll start with the exhaust. You rotate the engine in the normal direction of rotation until let me get this back. Okay, you rotate the engine in the normal rotation until the intake valve, and we're watching a lifter here, but you can watch the push rod or whatever, until the intake valve opens all the way up and starts to close about midway. Then set the exhaust on that cylinder. Now, when I'm doing hydraulics, depending on what the cam is and the lifters I'm using, the preload could either be, what you're basically trying to do is center the plunger inside of the lifter. If you set the lifter off the bottom of the plunger, you're going to get less lift loss, but you stand a chance of also, if you've got a real tight lifter, it can, a tight tolerance lifter, it can actually, it can pump up and hold it out. So if it's a tight tolerance lifter, I usually give them 1/4 of a turn to 3/4 of a turn. And really it's all about kind of preference. Generally speaking, I give them a 1/2 turn. I run the lash all the way out till we have no more lash. Just till it touches. Right there, it touches. It's like I go this way, we're loose. I run it down, and it just till it touches. All right, and then give it a 1/2 turn. And by the way, that part is not that critical. You just want to make sure it's zero lashing, not already a 1/2 turn or some shit. And then just give it a 1/2 turn. That's it. Now, when you set your jam nut on your polylock, of course, if it's a factory nut, you just leave it. But if you're using a posi stop, polylock, whatever you want to call it, I see these guys, and they'll, if you just tighten that, it ain't going anywhere. But I see these guys that are showing y'all how to do this, and then they put that in there, and then they give it another, quarter of a turn. That's not necessary. You can actually break the stud doing that, or break the poly lock, getting them too tight. So don't do that. All right. Now, like I said, we set the exhaust with the intake, goes all the way open, and starts to close. When it's on the closing ramp, then you know you're on the base circle of the exhaust load. Now, to set the intake, what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the engine in the normal direction until the exhaust just starts to open. About right there. A little off of maybe midway, somewhere in that range. Then we're going to do the exact same thing and set the intake valve for that cylinder. Just run the lash out of it. Give it a half a turn. And you're done. That's it. Run your posi stop down. Now you want it tight, but like I said, you don't have to, you don't have to do the whole wrench and give it a quarter turn. That's just ridiculous. I mean, think about it. If you're using a feeler gauge to set a solid flat tappet cam, and you give it that, well, then your lash is going to be all up. So you can't do that. Just tighten the damn thing, and you're done. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Don't make it more than it is. But don't do like I said, do it one cylinder at a time. And if you do that, you'll know it's right. And that works on any engine. One cylinder at a time. Make sure that when you're setting your exhaust valve, the intake valve needs to open all the way up and start to close. When you're setting the intake valve, you want the exhaust valve to start opening on that cylinder. That's it. Half a turn, you're golden. All right. I'm going to do another video on how to set them off the bottom. Now, I'm sure y'all have heard of the Rhodes VMAX lifter. And all that lifter is, it's got a shim in it that keeps it so that when you turn it down, it doesn't bottom all the way out. And what that does, because when you do set them way off the bottom, it does change the valve geometry a little bit, because you really need longer push rods to do that. But I'll get into all that later. But you can set them off the bottom for performance with certain types of lifters. And basically the way you do that is you put a feeler gauge in there, 30 thousandths or so, and you run it all the way down until you bottom it out, bottom the plunger out on that feeler gauge, and then you stop there. And then that gives you, when you set it there and then you pull the feeler gauge out, well, then you're basically setting 30 thousandths off the bottom on the plunger, and then it can't. You can't lose any more than 30 thousandths of lift on that load. So you can set it as tight as 15. But I'll get into all that in another video. That's a whole nother video. This is just your basics. And I know there's other videos out there, but any of them, and I've watched them, and some of them are spot on when they tell you to set like I just told you to set it. That's the way you do it. So anyway, we will be back when I get these set. I think we're going to put the intake on this one.